Alright, huge movie fanatic coming back at you again with another movie slash Blu-ray review of The Final Terror. I think this is like Andrew Davis's first movie, like directorial debut, and he actually lensed it, shot it. He was a director of photography on it as well under a different name for stupid, what do they call that? Union reasons. And this is, of course, a review of the movie and also the new, beautiful, if I can briefly say, beautiful Scream Factory release, which just came out on July 1st, I think, of the film as well. So let's get into the movie review, and then the Blu-ray review, if I don't forget, will follow the movie review. So for right now, I shall put that right there. So Final Terror is a movie that I saw, me and Matt, the guy who formerly used to review with me on this channel, and may in the future, or may not if he contacts me or doesn't. Worked at a mom and pop video store with Matt. That's where I met him, and they actually had this movie on VHS. It was originally put out, probably the only VHS ever put out of it was a Vestron video release of it, probably obviously in the mid 80s. It wouldn't have been anything before that because it was made, it kind of came out, I think it was made like in 81 or something. It didn't come out until 83 because by then it's like some of the people in it, Daryl Hannah and Rachel Ward, were something by that time, so it was kind of like, oh, I'll put it out. So I never even heard of it, or never even, you know, anything like that. But it was in the horror section, VHS, at this mom and pop video store I used to work at, and I'm like, oh, cool, like, you know, I mean, I'm a huge fan of like young, what's her name, Rachel Ward, man. She was, she was something, you know, like in Night School and Dead Men Don't Wear Plaid and stuff. She was a knockout. And, you know, I'd be interesting to see, like, you know, pre-famous Daryl Hannah and Rachel Ward. I think those are the two biggest names, I think, in the movie as far as actors. And I put it on DVD at the time, you know, because I'm like, well, this is a rare gem, I've never heard of it. So, you know, after I watched it or something, I put it on DVD just in case I ever want to watch it again. And so that's the first time I saw it, you know, and I remember thinking like, ooh, this is cool. First of all, this movie's beautiful. I'm a huge outdoor enthusiast, and I love the woods, and I love rivers and lakes, and just, you know, in nice weather, nice being warm, and above freezing weather, I love the outdoors and woods and stuff. And this movie is apparently filmed up in the same kind of area, pretty much this exact same area that Endor, you know, Return of the Jedi Endor stuff would be shot in northern, I believe, Northern California, I think. Right around probably the same area that they shot the Endor stuff from Return of the Jedi. So it's just big, huge redwood, you know, forest, and just these, you know, 3,000-year-old trees, and these huge ass mofo trees, and just big trees. And so it's a very, one of the biggest things it has going for it is just it's a very beautiful movie, and the location, I eat up the location. So that's pretty much one of the biggest things it's got going for it. I love the majority of the performers. You got this one guy who I don't think I'm going to be able to remember his name. Should be on here. Yeah, Joe Pantolano. I'll just say Joe Pantolano is the guy who would end up being in The Matrix, who would, you know, he was in The Matrix, who would deceive the good guys or whatever because he wanted to be put back in The Matrix. That guy, he's really good in this. And oh, that's the other actor that's, you know, became something. It went on to continue and become rather well known. So there was 3 in here that actually went on to become, you know, pretty successful. And where the hell was I going? Oh, what I was saying is I love the performers. It's a pretty strong cast, and some of them, like one of the guys, I think is like his first movie, and you wouldn't really know it. What I love about Final Terror, I'll say some of the good stuff first, is the performers are all really great. The movie feels, the world of the movie creates, of just these guys who are, you know, whatever, go sent out to, you know, clean up, you know, the river, clear the river, and then they just hang out and stuff like that. It's very realistic, you know, and for being like a first-time director, Andrew Davis had formerly been a director of photography, so, you know, that happens a lot of times where, you know, directors of photography end up being directors themselves, and so he was obviously, you know, DOP on this movie in addition to director. But I mean, for a first-time director, you know, it has this really great real-world feel to it, and realism, almost like a documentary, like the acting and just the scenarios. It feels like you're like a third party or whatever, and just there, you know, watching this thing unfold. So those are the really big things about it. Pretty much the biggest strengths about the movie is just the relatively solid cast and the beautiful location. Now the drawbacks are, the movie is really, it lasts for like whatever it is, like 84 minutes or something like that, and really at the end of the movie it's like, well, what happened? And even now, I've watched this Blu-ray like two or three times, one of them with commentary, and afterwards you're like, you know, nothing. I mean, it's like nothing really happens in the movie. I mean, there's basically one on-screen kill. Now, this is how it happens. There's this couple in the movie who actually I really like, and the only two characters, the guy who's in charge of the guys and the girl who's in charge of the girls, and they end up getting together in the spring, in the water, you know, in a spring or a falls or something like that, and, you know, making some love. And these are the only two characters that you actually kind of start to develop characters, and they're the characters I like the most. And I guess I can just say this movie's over 30 years old. I'm not going to spoil, like, you know, the end or anything about the killer and the identity or anything like that, but I will say that these people die. You know, the people that I like the most die are like the only people that die in the movie, and one of them died. There's only like one. Originally, when they shot this movie, there's only one on-camera kill, and it's the guy being hacked up on top of the girl, and the girl's like, no, no, and she later dies off-camera, and her body's thrown onto the raft later on. So basically, and then whoever financed the movie or whatever went back after the movie was done and like, well, this, you know, in the days of Friday 13th Part 2 and Friday 13th, there's only one on-screen kill in this movie, so then they decided without Andrew Davis's, without his help or without his participation, they went and shot the scene that starts the movie, that with the British model, you know, in her hot pants, like just shorts, riding on the back of the motorcycle with this guy, and it's just, the movie starts so randomly with just, you know, shots of the beautiful like indoor forest, and then just like you hear a motorcycle and it's like, watch out, and then they crash. And so you basically just have two kills that they put in the beginning of the movie that they did after the fact. So originally when they did the movie, there was one on-screen kill and like two kills and one off-screen, I think, with the exception of killing, like, well, some people die at the end, but they just fall down and, you know, get you know. So it was really weird to me that, in retrospect, that, you know, during the heyday, the insurgence of the slasher movie, like Friday 13th 1 and 2 and Halloween and stuff, Prom Night, Terror Train, all this stuff, that it was like one like on-screen kill was just so weird. So I don't understand why they did that, but I guess, you know, they weren't setting out to necessarily make, I don't know what the hell they were setting out to make. I'm gonna go 2 stars for Final Terror. It's one of these movies that when you think about, it's like, oh yeah, Final Terror, then you watch it and it's like, well, it's a lot of dead space in the movie for me, just a lot of just looking around and, you know, that kind of stuff that I don't like. But the thing about it that for me is a pass is because, it, like I say, the environment, the whole environment of the whole movie is what I really like, which is just the forest and woods and streams and rivers and stuff like that, that, you know, it makes it, just watching it, just simply watching that, even if nothing's happening, is beautiful. So I think that pretty much does it for the movie review. Let's get on to the Shout Factory Blu-ray, or Scream Factory Blu-ray review of The Final Terror. Now this movie is so obscure that no one even knows where the hell the negative went. So what's very interesting is this Blu-ray, usually if they can, obviously, like Sleepaway Camp or other movies like Slumber Party Massacre, usually they'll like to try to get a hold of the original negative, of course, which makes most sense, and scan that for the optimum picture quality, which makes sense. In this case, no one knows where the negative is. I mean, you can't really say there isn't one. They just, there may not be one, or that it may be lost, or it is lost. But which was kind of interesting. That shows you how obscure this movie is. It's really weird to me. It's like, whoever originally paid for this, no one cared enough to just keep a track of it. So anyway, what's really interesting about this particular Blu-ray release, which is also a DVD, it's a combo. So you got a DVD as well for your whatever's DVD players. What's interesting about this release is I can't remember exact number. I think they picked the best stuff out of, I think it was something like, if I'm wrong, I'll put the correct number or something like that on the screen of prints. I think they picked, they were able to find like 6 prints from various collectors and stuff, and they picked, I guess, the best, the best scenes or the best, reels from all those prints, and basically cut this all together to make this the best presentation they could out of just, theatrical prints that existed, that were able to be found through collectors and stuff. And I got to tell you, I'm kind of a grindhouse. I kind of like Terror Train Blu-ray, which was kind of, beginning of reels and stuff would have specs. I don't mind artifacts. I know that blue-ray.com reviewers and stuff refer to artifacts, which are specs and all kinds of whatever holes in the film or the print or whatever and stuff, to be a which technically I guess they are like a negative thing. But for me, in that whole, that's how I grew up watching movies on VHS. I mean, transfers were so shitty in the 80s that's how everything was. Even into the 90s, like the early and mid 90s, I mean, there were all kinds of artifacts in the prints they used for the the VHS and Laserdisc releases. That's how it's been my whole life, and I don't mind it. As a matter of fact, I hate digital movies that are shot digital and they're so harsh looking and there's no artifact. It's just bleh. So what's really great about the Scream Factory Blu-ray release of the Final Terror is, some of these prints, some of the moments of these, which I think it's mainly in the beginning, have this cool, which is, technically a negative thing, which the print, it'll look fine, but it'll have this red every now and then that, keeps pulsing up this red hue in the darker bits of the shot, which you're probably seeing right now as I describe it. Which, again, I don't mind, because it's just like this really cool grindhouse. It really adds for me to the experience of watching this movie, because it's so obscure. I really love the fact that this was the only way for them to, do a Blu-ray release of this, was just to find, as many theatrical 35 prints they could of it and pick from the best stuff. And I gotta tell you, I mean, the sound, I was expecting a lot worse sound. The sound is fine. Obviously mono, obviously. The sound is fine. I don't have any problem with the sound. The image is, like, for the most part, gorgeous. And, I don't mind that. Like I say, I think it adds to the grindhouse, obscure movie effect of the movie, because what I love is being able to put in a Blu-ray that's really clear. I mean, it's really crisp and clear and stuff, but you can get that, like, back in the day when they did this, you'd go to certain, like, art house theaters in the city or whatever, and you'd be able to watch, like, for example, back in 2003, I think I went in the city. I had to drive into the city to watch an actual 35mm projection of Friday the 13th, 1980. So obviously, we've seen Tron and Rambo First Blood Part 2 projected theatrically with really old prints that were all discolored and stuff. And there's a certain charm, as much as you don't, would like to see it look better, there's a certain charm to watching an old movie with like an old, rat-tattered, quality to it, and not being absolutely pristine. So I would highly recommend the Blu-ray of Final Terror. Andrew Davis does a commentary that, there'll be blank. There's like a lot of blank spots where it just goes by and then he'll say something. But the commentary's, it's not horrible. I've heard worse. What else do we got in here? There's some interviews with some of these actors who didn't really turn out to be too much. Of course, you don't have an interview with Rachel Ward or, Daryl Hannah or John Palantano. But highly recommended. I mean, Scream Factory just keeps doing it, and unfortunately, from what I know of their future catalog, it's kind of, this is like, there's really nothing for me. Obviously, there's constantly stuff that they're future, going to put out. They're going to do Pumpkinhead. I haven't seen that. They've either just done or going to do Lake Placid. The DVD's fine for me. So there's stuff that they're going to constantly put out, but there's nothing that is in their future that I'm like, plan to necessarily get or extremely looking forward to. That. So that's kind of a bummer. So I'm hoping that, so for now, this is the last release of theirs that I'm anticipating. So hopefully that changes, and it'd be absolutely phenomenal if they'd be the perfect outfit to put out an actual Blu-ray of The Slayer, the 1981, I believe, movie with about the two couples on the island who end up, the Slayer. I love that movie to death, and I'm just waiting for someone. I mean, this movie might even be more obscure than that. I can't believe there's a Blu-ray release of this, and hopefully enough people buy it to continue to support Scream Factory, because what they're doing, like I said it before, they're the criterion of the slasher exploitation genre. And I never ever thought I'd see a Blu-ray of The Final Terror. So maybe I'll end it there. A movie that's if you're nature, if you like the woods as much as I do, you'll like just the whatever, and just the scenery. But unfortunately, there's not a whole hell of a lot to The Final Terror. Unfortunately, the characters aren't very well developed, and the two that you like die right away, and it's like, oh shit. And there's a lot of just dead air for me. So 2-star movie, but an amazing Blu-ray, and it's a recommended movie if you like early 80s, horror movies. Like I say, it's really not a slasher, because Andrew Davis, I don't know if he was trying to do something more classy or suspenseful, and not so much about on-screen violence, but maybe just, I don't know, suspense, which is mostly just boredom. But it is very much along the lines of Don't Go in the Woods and the Forest and that kind of stuff. So Final Terror, or if you can afford it, I would definitely recommend picking up the Blu-ray/DVD combo from Scream Factory. I don't know what the hell that was. Thanks for watching.